Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Pather Panchali's the movie I'm talking about in this episode from 1955, written and directed by Satyajit Ray, who is the writer that the show Ray reviewed a couple weeks ago, the anthology series Ray from Netflix that I talked about is based on some short stories from the same person, Satyajit Ray. And this is his debut film in 1955. This is a story about a family in rural Bengal set in 1910. And it's a story about, it's definitely a movie that has a lot of realism to it. It's kind of a slice of life in a lot of ways. It's a movie where it's the main focus of this movie is of a family. The dad makes a little bit of money as a priest and has dreams of being a poet and a playwright. The mom is the caretaker of the kids and runs the household. The two kids, Durga and Apu, and then their auntie all live in this house that is a house that is, falling apart. It's a house made of like rock. I mean, this is a movie that you see a family living in basically utter poverty, in a rural part of India. And, you get to see this family and their struggles to survive. You get to follow these kids as they exist and enjoy life. And it's a movie that, being the debut film for Satyajit Ray, mind-blowing how absolutely gorgeous this black and white film is. Very high contrast, which brings out a lot of the textures of the film. Just beautifully shot. The compositions are amazing. The way these shots are framed, a lot of locked off, just long take shots. And not only is this Satyajit's first film, but also he was using inexperienced actors, inexperienced crew. So considering a lot of the people involved in making this film were new to the process, it is absolutely amazing. This movie was a lot of just a beautifully painful, I guess you could say. Not really painful. It's just a movie where you're following this family, obviously in a lot of poverty, and experiencing, this mom who's trying to, put food on the table, trying to run this household. Meanwhile, their auntie that lives there is a pretty big burden. She steals food from their kitchen that's already lacking in a lot of food. You have the daughter, who is this rebellious girl who steals fruit from one of the neighbors' farms. You have this rambunctious boy, Apu, who, plays around with his bow and arrow and kind of does the things that little boys do. And you're seeing these kids basically have what would be considered a fairly normal childhood, aside from the fact that they're living in like a home that has giant holes in the wall, a roof that leaks. It is about the closest thing you could call it. Is like a home that you would see on the survival reality show Alone, right? A home made out of rocks that are stacked on top of each other to construct the walls. You have a roof that's just made out of, wood beams and then like palm fronds on it. Just very basic, minimal, like ancient type of living, right? Despite the fact that this is set in 1910, it is it's a far departure from what modern living was available at the time. And there's even a scene in this movie where after a while, it's like towards halfway, 3/4 of this film, where these kids are out just, roaming around the area, as kids would do. and they come across these power lines and the hum that the power lines would have, and they see a train go by, and it's really jarring to see these modern things because you don't really know. I didn't know what year this took place until I was preparing to review this movie, that it took place in 1910, because it could have taken place 100 years before that. Right? There's no modern amenities in this household, no electricity, no running water, just the bare essentials for human survival. So when these kids come across these power lines and then see the train, it is almost as if they were transported into the future, as if these kids were time travelers from the past and experiencing like just a glimpse of just a couple aspects of modern society, right? You see these power lines that are running, which none of the houses in their village have power. They don't have running water. They collect their water from barrels. It is the bare necessities of life. And despite the fact that it is so removed from modern society, it is a very beautiful film. Not only visually beautiful, the performances are great. The themes of this movie, despite the lack of modern amenities and wealth, or even just basic needs, you see that people can still find moments of joy and moments of happiness, which shouldn't really be that crazy to think. It's not like people started being happy once modern amenities came around. But despite living a life where they're just on the razor's edge of survival in many ways, they're still able to appreciate what they have and to have love and to enjoy the life that they have. And it's very simple, which doesn't necessarily mean bad. Simple, kind of ancient in a lot of ways, but absolutely beautiful film. But very, despite how just simple this movie it feels like a movie that was made by somebody very confident. I mean, all of these shots that are just so gorgeous with their high contrast, where so many black and white films, everything just kind of is a shade of gray in so many black and white films, where this one, the use of contrast and brightness and shadows, how all of that plays, how all the compositions of these shots just are gorgeous to look at. Absolutely gorgeous. So a lot of this movie, you have the dad is away, trying to get work, trying to make money, right? Meanwhile, the mom is at home, and she's just trying to put food on the table, having to raise these kids, but also dealing with this auntie who's old. She's like ancient, this auntie, who at certain points, despite the mom giving her crap all the time, decides to leave, goes to visit other members of the family that are nearby. So, can't take the abuse, the verbal abuse anymore. And she leaves and comes back throughout these times as, you're seeing at first Durga is young, and then it's only her, and then later on they have their second child, Apu, and you see them kind of grow up. So it's a movie that, kind of chronicles this family over the years, living in this place where they never have enough money to fix the roof. They never have enough money to fix this massive hole that's in the wall that is utilized in many shots to a great effect. This just massive hole in the wall where there will be shots where you're seeing people inside the house and outside the house, and just everything is framed just perfectly. It adds to the storytelling how clearly certain characters are within eyesight of other characters, and just it's beautiful visual storytelling as well as just overall storytelling, and then just aesthetically a very beautiful film as well.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote
Gift certificates. If you want to purchase artwork for somebody, you have an art lover in your life, and you think they would like my art, but you don't know what painting to get them. I have over 2,000 original pieces of art for sale in my store, along with shirts and prints and other things. So I can understand that being a bit daunting if you're trying to buy something for somebody else. Give them the gift certificate, and then they can go to my website, inspireddisorder.com, and they can buy whatever paintings they want. They can buy whatever prints they want. They can buy t-shirts. They can buy hats. They can buy all the different merch. Gift certificates, which are available currently at inspireddisorder.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
There's also a great scene where these kids like run off, not run off, but like, you know, as the kids go out and play, right? They're not hanging out at home all the time. There's nothing at home to hang out and play, right? So they go out and they play in the trees and the nature that surrounds them in this rural part. And it's hilarious. They get together, all the kids from the village or whatever, they all get together as kids do, and they get together to cook food, which is kind of interesting, right? It's an activity that normally you would see adults do, right? Getting together, cook food for each other, but it's these kids getting together, bringing ingredients, you know, all kind of cobbling ingredients together. And these young kids, and there's a moment where they're talking about how it's like this skill that these girls have to learn how to cook because they get married off, and that is their duties to cook and clean and be the person who runs the house. And it's just so interesting to see just a scene where it's these kids that instead of going off to play games or do these things, which they also do in this movie, but they all get together and to make this food like a feast, and also arguing over who didn't bring the right ingredients, right? Somebody didn't bring salt, they just brought oil, whatever. But just such a unique, as so much of this movie is, such a unique perspective on a way of life, not only in a time that is so far away, but in a reality that is so different from what we're used to in modern society, right? Where all of these things and amenities and entertainments are taken for granted, and when you strip everything down to the bare essentials of life as is needed to survive in certain economic situations, you see that there's still a lot of joy that can be had despite the constant battle for just survival. And also seeing how not having access to money and services can affect a family, where it's so much harder to survive and to thrive in life when you're just struggling for bare necessities, whether it's to have a home that keeps you sheltered from the elements, or having access to medical care when somebody gets sick, like these things that you don't have access to because you can barely put food on the table, makes life so much more difficult than anybody who grew up even like poor in a modern society would ever be able to relate to, right? But I love this movie for how authentic it expresses and shows life in poverty, and shows how, you know, how tragic it can be when you don't have those modern amenities, when you don't even have the basic access to things that would just keep you healthy and keep you protected and keep you safe, right? So all of those aspects, I think, all the elements of this movie come together in a beautiful way to really provide an accurate portrait of this family who's struggling to survive. And at the end, when it rains, it pours, things just start to go downhill. where all of the safety nets and all of the things that they might have in a different financial situation just can effortlessly devastate a family, right? And it's shows how hard life can be, and how death is no stranger to that kind of life. When you don't have access to those things, when you're living like on the verge of starvation, you're living almost just out in the open, exposed, not really having a home to protect you from bad weather, and all of those things. You see how vulnerable life can be, right? Similar to the show I mentioned, Alone, this reality survival show, which I love. It shows what kind of primitive living was like, and how just easily the smallest thing could have the largest effect, right? The daughter in this movie, spoilers, the daughter in this movie, Durga, is like, has a cold, she has a fever. It only gets worse. They don't have access to medicine. They can't afford medicine, right? The doctor comes just like, try and keep her rested and warm. If she gets a fever, put a wet rag on her head. Like, the minimal amount of medical care you can give somebody when you can't afford medicine, which, if they had money, would easily be able to get medicine, and that wouldn't even be an issue. But when you're living a life where the smallest thing can have the biggest consequences, you see how that plays out. And that's after you see what happens to their auntie, who is ancient. This woman is so ancient. I kind of liked her. She's got a spunk to her, right? Not putting up with the bullshit, but also, kind of being a parasite in a lot of ways as well. But you see how, the kind of course of events, like the dominoes start falling. First the auntie, then Durga gets sick, and then there's this big storm that not only doesn't allow Durga to rest and get healthy, but also further damages this home that has been in dire need of repair, while this husband that's been gone forever, with no guarantee of making money, right? He's working all of these jobs, and so much of these jobs are like, maybe he'll get paid, right? There's not even the guarantee of payment in so many instances, where it's just like, he's doing all these things, he's away from his family all of the time, and there's very little guarantee of payment, when there will be payment. And when it finally happens, where it feels like, oh, we finally got something, we can kind of finally pay off some debts, we can finally do some repairs on the house. It's like, it's just like, this is a story that could easily be so many people in America right now, not necessarily living in the exact same situations, but people living paycheck to paycheck, people living with massive amounts of debt, people living in homes that are inadequate, that are in need of repair, people living in areas that have poisonous water, people in areas that are without power because of infrastructure attacks, or just states that refuse to upgrade infrastructure, where so many people that don't have health insurance or couldn't afford to pay, or are in massive amounts of debt because of an illness. Like, in so many ways, what this movie could easily be remade about a family living in Flint, Michigan, right? This could be a family living in Texas where the power goes out during the winter, right? This movie could be made in so many parts of America where the access to affordable health care doesn't exist. The being able to work at a place that will pay you a living wage so you can make sure you have food on the table, so you can make sure you can get health care when you need it, to make sure that you can repair your home and provide a safe place for your family to live. You could easily translate this movie into a modern day story of a family struggling to survive in America. And despite all of the modern amenities that we have in America, those basic necessities of life are still like, we have like literally flying cars exist. We have self-driving cars. We have space travel for like recreational space travel. We have AI. We have the ability to communicate with people on the other side of the world and send massive amounts of information everywhere. We have access to all of the knowledge of the world at our fingertips. We have all of these modern amenities and technologies and things that in some ways make life a lot different. But when the basic necessities of shelter and food and health care are not the primary like needs that are being met for the majority of people in a country, you have a story that could easily be this, where you're struggling to survive.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote the benefits of Inspired Disorder Plus. So you go inspireddisorder.com/plus. Sign up, $5 a month. You get to binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free. You get to watch all of the live painting videos I do. You get a special members-only discount and deals for all of the artwork and merch that I sell. You also get the complete podcast back catalog of every podcast I've ever produced, hundreds of episodes, countless different podcasts. You also get access to my personal blog. A new blog comes out every week. In addition to that, you get my creative writing that I'm releasing. You also get access to asking me anything. 14 years of experience podcasting. I've been creating art my entire life. I've been using Photoshop since middle school, and you can contact me to ask me questions about that or anything else. So those are the benefits for signing up for Inspired Disorder Plus. And now let's get back to the show. Let alone having the opportunity to follow your dreams, which is another one of these themes. This dad has these dreams of being an artist, being a writer, writing poetry and playwrights, and not doing these jobs, which he doesn't really have a passion for, but it's the only way he could put food on the table. And it's like impossible to follow those dreams because of life, which for so many people, you can't afford to start a career doing something else or follow a dream in so many instances, because especially if you have a family, it's like it would be hard on your own, let alone if you have 2 kids and an auntie that steals your ingredients out of your kitchen. And you still, even despite those things, you can still find joy in life and probably appreciate the joyful moments far more because you understand how close to tragedy you are, surrounded by other people experiencing similar things, whether, all of the different things that are birthed out of poverty, surrounded by crime, surrounded by crumbling infrastructure, surrounded by just people trying to escape, self-medicating and all of these things. You see the complete opposite side of the spectrum, so it makes you enjoy the small good moments that you have even more. Which I think, I read some opinions of this movie where people say that this movie glamorizes in some way poverty, or at least not glamorizes, but makes it seem not as bad. I forget the exact term they used, but I don't think it does at all.
right? It shows you what happens when things go bad, but it also shows you that humans can still appreciate life and have moments of joy and have moments of fun without money, without all of the modern amenities, and probably enjoy those things more because they understand how bad it can get. And how this movie ends is in many ways tragic, because it shows what happens when it rains, it pours, and when things kind of start going bad, and you can't stop them. There's nothing you can do. You're just at the mercy of life and are just dealing with the consequences of your situation. But I love that this is the first part of a trilogy of movies that follow the kid Apu, right? Part of the Apu trilogy, which I'm excited to be watching. I will be watching the second film for next week, and then the third film the following week. So I'll be interesting to see the story of this kid who, in this movie, he's born. You see him as a young kid, and then you see him survive, and you see him experience his sister dying, his auntie dying, the home he grew up in being destroyed by a storm, having to leave their ancestral home. This is a home that the dad's family, it's been like his family home, and he's been trying to fix it up, and because it's been their home forever. And then they're finally, at the end of this movie, it's them leaving to go find a better life somewhere else. So it's in a lot of ways definitely the start of this kid's journey in life, and seeing how the traumas and hardships that he's had to deal with as a kid, how maybe those play out. I don't know. I haven't watched the films yet, but I would imagine. And these are based on a novel, so I would imagine there's a good framework for what these movies are going to be revealing and discussing. So I don't know. I really enjoyed this movie. It's not like it's a movie that's not, you're just kind of, there's no like antagonist. It's not your typical plot, right? You're just seeing a family try to survive. You're seeing kids being kids, and you're seeing what happens to this family, right? Where life is really the antagonist. And you're seeing this family try to pull themselves together and start a new life somewhere else, right? The life that they had at this ancestral home is no longer possible. It's just too much. There's even more work to try and fix the home. It's just not a situation that's going to allow them to give them the opportunity to flourish in any way, because they're always behind trying to catch up. And it's kind of sad that you have this movie that is telling a story from a poor family in the year 1910 in rural Bengal, India, and it could so easily be adapted to a modern day story of a poor family living in America, living in one of the richest countries of the world, struggling with many of the same things, with many of the same constant struggles that you would have being poor, trying to survive, trying to raise kids. Meanwhile, it's so effortless for tragedy to happen, So anyway, I highly recommend it. I'm excited for number 2. I think this was a very honest representation of poverty, as I do not agree with the person that said it was, tried to kind of looked at it with like rose-colored glasses. I don't think this movie necessarily glorifies it in any way, right? But doesn't shy away from showing that just because life in comparison is garbage doesn't mean there aren't moments of joy that can be had. Yeah, it's a movie about how rough life can be for anybody, even in current modern day. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous with the type of world we're living in, how so much progress can be made and people can easily be left behind and not considered worthy of living a life of integrity and provided safety and safety nets to help them when they need help. So I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's a gorgeous film. Absolutely gorgeous. One of the most beautiful black and white films. And it's like, 4:3. It's not widescreen. It was made in the 50s, so gorgeous anyway. Panchali. Highly recommend checking it out. I think it's on HBO. I think they're all on HBO. Check it out.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.